Here's how the pond looks once it's matured. G'day, my name is Kev. The aim of my channel and website is to help people build and maintain ponds on a budget. So let's get into everything you'll need to build an ecosystem pond like this one. I'll try and include as many links as possible in the description to help you find all the components. This is the basic design of the pond. It has a bog filter that keeps the water clean and clear. It has a DIY skimmer that will suck in leaves and surface debris before it sinks inside the pond. The pond is approximately 4 metres at its longest point and 3 metres at its widest point. That's about 13 feet 2 inches by 10 feet for those that prefer to use the more difficult imperial measuring system. The deepest part of the pond is only 60 centimetres or 2 feet. There are 3 levels of shelves. The shelves are used to stack the rock and provide different levels for different plants. For the bog filter, I used an old olive drum. These hold 220 litres or around 60 gallons. You could potentially use any sort of container that can hold water. The filter is hidden in the berm that the stream is built on. I needed to add a retaining wall because of the courtyard pavers, but if this was being built in an open yard, you could just use some strategically placed rocks to contain the soil in the berm. That's what I've done here on the backside. This is the basic design of the bog filter in a barrel. Water is pumped into the base of the barrel. It's dispersed via a T-piece fitting at the bottom. There are large rocks at the bottom, gradually getting smaller and smaller. As we move up through the barrel, the rocks are going to be colonised by bacteria and tiny organisms that will purify the water. You'll also notice I've added in a pipe down the bottom for easy draining of the filter and an overflow pipe. To create a watertight seal in these holes, I've used uni-seals. I'll link those down in the description. The size of the overflow and clean-out pipe is 50 mil or 2 inch in diameter. It's just standard size pressure pipe. This filter is really effective and very cheap to create. I have a video showing exactly how to build one, so I'll put a link to that one in the description also. So when digging the shelves, you want to create nice vertical walls with a flat base to hold some of the larger rocks. I went for 3 different shelves, each about 20 centimetres or 8 inches to achieve my 60 centimetre or 2 foot depth. I mounted the dirt up around the filter to create a berm. There's a general rule that you go at least twice as wide with the berm as you go high. Went 3 times, I think that's even better, and that's what I've done here. If you go too high and not wide enough, it doesn't look natural. I dug the pond out just using a shovel. I had pretty good digging and it took around 4 hours. To line the pond we used a rubber EPDM liner. We also added a geotextile underlayment to cushion the liner. On this pond I didn't do it, but I think it's a good idea to sandwich the liner in between the geotextile. So a layer below and a layer on top. As you can see on this pond, I've gone straight onto the liner. The pond is coming up 3 years and no problems, but the geotextile is reasonably cheap, so why not double up? So to work out how much liner is needed, it's simply the length plus 2 times the depth and the width plus 2 times the depth. And then I added on an extra 2 metres to cover the berm. This is where the stream will run. And of course, order the same amount of geotextile or twice as much if you decide to sandwich the liner between the 2 layers. I chose to add the 2 metres extra for the berm so that I have just one continuous piece of liner, and that way I know that all the water is going to make its way back into the pond. So with the dimensions of this pond, I needed a liner that was 7.2 metres by 4.2 metres. And I like to get a little extra, so I got a piece that was 7.5 by 4.5 metres. For the rock, I got 5 metres of large colac rock. It's a basalt, I'm pretty sure. You can use whatever's easy to source in your area. I'm not quite sure how many tonnes this is. It's hard to calculate as all rocks have different weights. I'd estimate between 7.5 and 10 tonnes, but don't hold me to that. These are the large rocks that you're going to use to form the walls, do the stream and any berm retaining that needs to be done. Try and get them as large as you can comfortably move yourself, but vary the size also so that they aren't all the same size. We do want it to look natural. To fill in behind the larger rocks and the flat bottoms, I've used a 7mm gravel. I needed 1.5 cubic metres of this. The plumbing line I've got running from the skimmer to the bog filter is 32mm or 1.25 inch pipe. In this pond I've used the rigid PVC, but it's easier if you can source some flexible PVC, then you can avoid the need for all the various elbow fittings. I like to run the plumbing inside the liner, so if I ever have a leak in the plumbing, it's all just going to return to the pond. For the skimmer I use just an old bucket with plenty of holes drilled in the side. It sits within the pond. I sort of dug out a little hole for it to sit in. It's within the liner, so there's no need to cut out any holes or anything like that in the liner itself. Pump sits inside the bucket. It's a good idea to add a no return or check valve to the plumbing near the pump. This will stop water draining from the bog filter back into the pond should the power go out. I then have a coarse sponge that sits over the top of the pump. It's quite hard to see here when it's full of muck. This is the type I've found I like the best. I'll put a link to that one in the description. So you just cut the sponge so that it fits inside the bucket and obviously cut out a hole to fit the pipe work through. All you need to do is create some tension on the surface of the water. I placed 2 rocks either side of the bucket and anchored in an offcut of pond liner. The offcut of the pond liner acts like a weir door that you would find on the expensive purchase pond skimmers. As you can see, any surface debris is pulled into the bucket and trapped in the sponge. You can dress it up and make it look as natural, however you like. I've got a little video talking about the DIY skimmer, so I'll put a link to that also. The pump I'm using in this pond is a 460 litre per hour model. The thing with a bog filter is they like slow flow. This pump's still a bit of overkill for the size of the filter, but it works and it's providing a good flow for the stream. It's a DC pump and DC pumps are solar compatible. However, because this is powering the filter, it needs to run 24/7. These pumps might only be available in Australia, so I'll link a few other suitable models down in the description. Because these pumps are low voltage, it's easy to run the power yourself. I ran it under the courtyard pavers. While I was at it, I also added in an air line so I could have plenty of oxygen in the pond. The air pump I'm using is just a small cheap model connected to 2 air stones via a 3/8 inch tube. But it provides a great amount of agitation and oxygen for the pond, which is important for the fish and other biological processes that are keeping the water clean. Because the liner was one continuous piece, creating the stream was really easy. I just carved out a little channel in the berm and dog-legged it back into the pond. I gave it a little test before adding any rock. You can see I cut out a wide section of liner there on the right-hand side, so I could plant that with normal terrestrial plants. I then added the rocks. To ensure the water flows over the rocks and not under them, I used waterfall foam to seal in the gaps. I've since found out that it's okay to use normal expandable foam, which is much cheaper. So here it was with the rock and the gravel and the foam all in. And here's how it looks now that it's all matured. There's moss growing on the rocks. Sorry the plants don't look their best as it's winter when I'm taking this footage. When you fill it up, it's going to be cloudy and you'll get algae growth. This is all normal. You can add in some beneficial bacteria to help establish the ecosystem, or you can just wait for this to happen naturally. And to clear the muddy water, a flocculant will make a huge difference. These are what I used, but again I'll link suitable alternatives in the description. I did add in some solar pond lights, which are okay, but them in themselves are not enough, so I have 3 low volt lights that I can turn on when I want to sit by the pond. I also add in a couple of these really cheap small solar fountain pumps to help move debris out of some of the nooks and crannies where it would try and settle. I was skeptical about how these would go, but they actually work pretty good. So that's the functionality and the hardscape components taken care of. Now if you're still interested, I'll talk about the plants I've used in and around the pond. All these little pops of colour are impatiens. They're planted directly into the gravel on the margins and in the stream. They don't mind their feet being in constant water. For most of us, these are an annual and they'll need to be replaced every year. This is upright milfoil. I've used it on the margins and up in the stream. It provides a good cover for baby fish, and in the stream, it's a great filter. This strappy little guy is dwarf sweet flag. Like the milfoil, I've also used this up in the stream as well as on the margins. Of course, you can't have a pond without water lilies. These are a hardy variety. They're planted in pots, but I built the pots into the walls when I was rocking in the pond. This trailing plant is Bacopa monaria. It will spread over the margins and even continue growing underwater. I've also used this as the plant in the bog filter. So for the terrestrial plants, these 2 are dwarf nandinas. Nandinas are great because they're evergreen, but they still change colour throughout the seasons. The shrub hiding the bog filter is Trachelospermum tricolour. In tropical climates it's a climber, but here it stays as a shrub. These small shrubs on the left are Acacia cognata, mini-cog, and that silver ground cover between them is Dichondra silver falls. These little yellow dudes are Sedum goldmound. That moss-like plant behind them is called Scleranthus biflorus. This ground cover is Lamium maculatum. I then have various types of Japanese maples. The climber on the fence is Ficus pumila, or climbing fig. And lastly, a random prostrate conifer. I'm not sure what its name is. It was part of the original garden, and it grows really slowly, but I think it's going to look great here once it gets a little bit bigger. And I did add a Venus flystrap up on the left of the small stream waterfall. It's winter as I'm making this video, so I'm not sure if he's going to come back or not. But he sure did look cool last season. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, throw them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thanks for watching. See ya.